We can go around and introduce ourselves. We're small but mighty today. I am Jordan Lester with the Village of Glencoe, and I'm joined with our other two members of our business services team, Taylor Baxter, if you want to wait, yeah, he's our development services manager, and Sharon Tanner, our assistant village manager. I have the pleasure of introducing Gina Speckman, the executive director of Chicago's North Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau, who is joining us today to give us some very helpful information about COVID-19. Gina, before I hand it over to you, Jeff and Norm, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Thank you, Norm.
Norm Block. I'm the senior lawyer in Glencoe.
Thank you.
And I'm Jeff Mazer. I have a State Farm Insurance Agency in Glencoe.
Nice to see you both.
Thank you.
And all of you.
Thanks,
Do you want me to take it away here? Okay.
Wonderful.
Pretty soon I'm going to get off camera, which is my favorite place to be, but because my presentation is going to take over. But if we have any questions, we're not going to chat them, I guess. We're just going to come back on after, and then you can ask away. The entirety of this presentation will be given to Jordan, who can send it out to everyone, because there's a lot of live links in it, so you don't have to write anything down. You will get a copy of it. And without further ado, let me start sharing the screen and start the presentation. So, well, I do have, if you have questions or want to stop me, you can wave your hand, because I have another screen on with the presentation. So you can all see that, right?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure before I go into full screen here. Okay, well, to start off, my name is Gina Speckman. I'm Executive Director of Chicago's North Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau. During normal times, we're selling the North Shore to people from outside of the area, whether it be in Chicagoland, Midwest, nationally, internationally. But what we've become lately is kind of trying to help our businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic to survive the pandemic. And so we've really had to become experts in a lot of the programs that can assist the small businesses. And then we also try to keep them informed on, where we are in the ever-changing landscapes of Restore Illinois phases, and then the changes and mitigations to those phases. And then last but not least, with a lot of businesses pared down in terms of staffing due to revenue declines and other things, we have become really their sales and marketing support. We support all of our restaurants, hotels, which I know Glencoe doesn't have any hotels, but retailers and small businesses. During the pandemic, we have relaxed our membership requirements. So if we have 9 member municipalities, and we represent all the businesses in those municipalities that fall within our jurisdiction, meaning hotels, restaurants, retailers, and attractions. So without further ado, I'm going to start my presentation. So I always try to give a quick overview of where we are today, which changes every minute. Like this slide today could change very quickly, because right now we are, as many of you know, Region 10, as determined by the Illinois Department of Public Health, divided the state of Illinois into regions. So we're Cook County. We're in Phase 4, except Cook County has added another layer to Phase 4, which normally would cap indoor meetings to 50 people. We're still capped at 25, and then restaurants are also at 25. There is talk now that this might be increased to 50 very soon, but as of 8:30 today, it's still at 25. So this tells you, again, where we're at, the, things that most of you know, and this really pertains a lot to restaurants, but seating has to be 6 feet apart. I'm not going to go read all this. Again, the notable changes is that we're in Phase 4, except we have an extra layer of Cook County mitigation, which has us capped at 25. Um, the only thing that really impacts us is, as you know, Glencoe is at the border of Lake County. And so we have a situation now where the people that are north of Lake Cook Road have looser mitigations than we do, which is not great. And I think that is, will be changing, but that's the issue when we have all these different layers of state and county, and it's really hurting. Like, we have hotels that are on the south side of Lake Cook Road, and they are under limitations that the ones in Deerfield aren't. So, it is competitively not advantageous to us. Now, if you want to know all about the Cook County mitigations, that'll be in this page. There's a link to them. So one of the things what I'm going to cover really are the different programs that are available that came as part of the Consolidated Appropriations Act that was passed at the end of December, and in it included $900 billion in additional COVID relief funding. This is what passed in December. A lot of times when I start talking about this, people are like, well, the bill hasn't passed yet. The new bill that President Biden is working on is a new bill. December 27th, this bill passed, which gave also the government its budget, but in it was a $900 billion COVID relief funding. So we're going to talk first about PPP loans and grants, and then I'll give a quick overview of what I've been telling most of our members that we deal with. But there's, you can see who's available. What's new is in the past, 501c6s were not available. We're not allowed to. They were not allowed to be part of the PPP program, so they are now. I'm a C6, so bureaus, chambers, and like organizations were not allowed to apply for the previous PPP, and they are now. And when you see on top here, first draw and second draw, this is really interesting. If any businesses got PPP in the first draw, meaning last spring, summer, early fall, they're allowed to get a second draw. And if you can swing it, you could also even get a first draw now. And if you use the money over a separate length of time, which I'll get into, you can get a second draw within this time period between now and March 31st. So really quick, the only difference really between the first draw and the second draw is they've lowered the amount of employees that you can have, which doesn't pertain to most of us. But, and you do have to show that you experience a 25% decline in revenue, which a lot of people have, and that you can't ask for a second draw if you have not exhausted your initial PPP funding. So the application process is the same, except they have raised the limit for the simplified loan application. And it used to be $50,000. So if you're seeking $150,000 or less, you can use the simplified loan application. The deadline for either the first or second draw is March 31st. And the maximum loan size varies. It's either 2.5 times payroll up to $2 million. And then for food and lodging, it's 3.5 times. So, for example, I advise most people to take their 2019, look at the months and use the month that had the highest payroll. But I also am really, really, really telling people that your life will be so much easier if you apply for $150,000 or less. I know some people that have done the formula and it came out to $162,000. I still would tell them to apply for $150,000 or less. The application's like one page or less. It's very easy, and the loan forgiveness document is really simple. You basically just sign an affidavit that you use the monies as they were intended, and both of those applications for the easy ones are going to be part of this. You can see these links here that you can just go to and get. So again, I advise people that, if you can get $400,000 and you're in a different kind of business and you have had a lot of, lost revenues for salaries, apply for 400,000. But if you're anywhere in the ballpark, I advise all our members to go for the simplified loan application. It's very easy. So, different than the first PPP program, you can determine the amount of time you want it to cover. So it can be 8 weeks or 24 weeks. But your time starts ticking the day that your loan is funded. And right now they're doing it really quickly. So, I mean, you could, in theory, get approved for your loan and on a Tuesday, accept your loan on a Wednesday, and that money's in your bank on Friday. And Friday would be the day that your loan begins, the day that you receive the funds. You can decide if you want to use it for 8 weeks or if you want to use it for 24 weeks. It's up to you. And where this comes into play is if you decide to use it for 8 weeks, you can then apply for another loan by March 31st that covers a different future time period that's allowable. So I don't know that many people that are going to do that, but I know some that are. And it's just, something that I didn't even think would be available, but it is. You do have to go through a bank. They do now have new rules that they can't leave you hanging and not tell you about your loans. This is for PPP or the EIDL and any of the loans. In the new iteration of these grants and loans, they have by law now to tell you yes or no. And I'll give you an example, like our business, we applied for an EIDL loan in April and we got it in November. And between April and November, we heard nothing. So that can't happen anymore. And the one thing I just really want to talk about is, for the most part, people want PPP as a forgiven loan, not as a loan. And if you do the simplified one, it's a lot easier to have it forgiven, because, again, you're just basically attesting that you use the money. You can't use it to go to Hawaii on a vacation. You have to show that you used it in the ways that are allowable within the grant documents, like 60% has to be on salaries, et cetera. But I'll get into that here. Tax-free loan forgiveness for amounts used to cover eligible expenses. At least 60% of the loan has to be used for payroll in order to get loan forgiveness. And an expense paid for with PPP money can be deducted if it's a typically deducted expense, and all loan and guarantee fees are waived. And this is just, to give you a broader view of the program. During the first round, they distributed $525 billion to 5.2 million small businesses. And they did have money left over in that program when it ended. And then this time around, which started January 13th and ends March 31st, they've allotted $284 billion. And then I've already covered this, but, average payroll, different, higher for restaurants. You must apply through a participating bank or lender. That has not changed. In addition to payroll costs, loan funds can be used to pay for benefits, and then you can see that on the right side. The left side of what it was, and the right side are some new things that can be used to be paid for with PPP funds. So here again, just covering that, whether you choose your coverage period, but 60% has to be for payroll and 40% has to be for legitimate expenses that I had, like on the previous slide. If any of your loan stays a loan and is not forgiven, the interest rate is 1%, and you can just see the different maturities for if you got it in the first round or second. So we've already been past it. Just some of the things too, because I have had a couple of new businesses that were not able to apply because they weren't in business at February 15th of 2020, but here are really clear-cut rules of what you have to be able to demonstrate in order to apply for this second round. And again, the 25% reduction in gross receipts when you compare 2019 to 2020. And you can read all this too, but I went over it too. What is required for $150,000 or less loan? You don't include PPP1. You don't include any loan funds when you talk about the receipts. It's only the receipts that you got as a normal business operator. None of your grants or loans are applicable to that. And again, you have to use your PPP1 funds before you ask for PPP2. Documents you need for application, full year of internally prepared or third-party payroll records. You can use bank statements. We have a lot of small businesses that are just like, I just have it in a ledger, and we've had people show them how to just put it in Excel or put it in QuickBooks, have somebody do that for them. Business owners should sign up P&L. Like some businesses, literally, they bookkeep in their own way. That's okay, as long as it's something that you can verify and back up with your bank statements. And then you can see the documents needed for forgiveness. Basically, they want to see that if you started out with your loan with 6 employees, you better still have 6 employees at the end. They don't want to see that you got a loan, had 6 employees, and now have 3. So the emphasis really is on the payroll. Now, again, you have to apply through a lender. And our lenders were just caught off guard and didn't know anything more than any of us knew when PPP first happened and the pandemic first hit and everyone was scrambling and panicking. They now either have seamlessly integrated some third-party softwares that have been developed to just handle these loan applications. They are experts at it now versus, just trying to stay above water last time. Like they really were caught off guard and, especially if they're part of a bigger banking system, it was just a major change to begin to administer, tens of thousands of grants, even on a local level. So to that end, it's a lot easier now. Your lender knows the score. They have an easy way for you to fill out the applications, and through their new expertise and through the new laws, which require responses on a much timelier basis, it's just a lot easier now. I mean, unfortunately, the pandemic, should have been over, and then we wouldn't have needed any of this. But now we're experts at dealing with it, so we have to take the good with the bad, right? Now I'm going to talk really quickly about some other things that have changed as part of that new law, and that is they returned the business meal deduction, which is kind of important for restaurants. People ate out, deducted it as a business expense, especially small, independent proprietors and businesses would take a client to lunch. That's a legitimate business expense. So that has been returned. And then there's also employee payroll tax deferral, and that is, I think it's up to $7,000. And a lot of people have been taking advantage of that. You can't, if you have any other kind of grant funding in which you have included payroll taxes as an expense, you can't do this too. So you have to do one or the other. So it's easy. So just if you want to do an employee payroll tax deferral, just make sure that it wasn't included as a legitimate expense that you got funding for through another program. And that is very easy to apply for and do.
Gina, excuse me, this is Jeff.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I have to step off. I have a 9 o'clock company meeting. So thank you for your presentation, but I'm sorry. I do have to leave short.
Okay, thanks for coming, and you can get the presentation later.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too now.
So again, here's more information about the employee retention tax credit. It doesn't apply to a lot of people. Most of the people I know that are doing this have already researched it because it was part of the program last time. But that being said, here's the link for more information on the employee retention tax credit. And the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is a program that's administered by the SBA. And it's interesting because the terms for a for-profit business is 3.75 and 2.75 for a not-for-profit. And I know people and this is why we did it, that applied for it. And in order to just stabilize funding in the long term, you don't have to start paying it back for a year. If you get the loan and you end up not using it, you return it with no penalties at all. And it's a very it's a good term. It's a loan with really good terms on it. So for people that are not sure or feel uncertainty for planning like a 2-year future and want to stabilize their funding, it's a really good source because, again, you don't have to start paying it back for a year. You can return it with no penalty, and you're not going to get these terms. These are really good terms. So here's a link about it. In the beginning, you might have heard that people that got it, like in the late spring and early summer, were getting $10,000 initially just put into their bank account, and it was a grant. That does not exist anymore. That was in the initial offering of the EIDL, and they're no longer giving the initial $10,000 payment as a grant. That funding went away, and it's all a loan now. This is just more information about EIDL. And don't read the part about advances because those went away. And again, the new part of this law says that they have to let you know within 25 days of receiving the application if you're approved and denied. I swear to God, we applied in April, and we never even heard if we were approved or denied in November. They just deposited the money in our account. So I don't know if that part changes, so I always advise people that are applying for any kind of loan or assistance, including PPP, that you may or may not sometimes get a communication. You may wake up one day with the funds just deposited into your account. So, obviously keep an eye on that. And I know there's no restaurateurs on here, but there's some specific legislative initiatives that apply and are just specifically for restaurants. So there's a link for that. And in all these calls, I'll just spend 2 seconds on this. I just have really good data on consumer behavior in relation to COVID-19. And, I share it with our board of directors and our members, but I just took a couple slides here because I think some of this impacts everybody, no matter what your business is in, and it's just great data. This really shows COVID's impact on the national, and this is the perception of people, how COVID-19 has impacted the national economy, people's personal finances, health of family and friends, and personal health. And you might say, like, personal health. Well, personal health and health of family and friends and the anxiety that is related to that is driving a lot of people's decisions of how they spend their money. And so they look at this data. And really, if you look at it in the long term, it's, when you see increases, it's usually have been a spike in COVID, and then it goes down if there isn't. Obviously, people are concerned about the economy in general, much more so than their personal finances. They're concerned about their family and friends' health, and it could be, older relatives and whatnot more than they are their own. But it's interesting to see how it trends over time. And this is really interesting, and I'm for sure not going to be reading this, but you can see from the bottom, which is like the things people are most comfortable doing, to the top, which people feel is the most unsafe, where everything fits in. So, I think the message that I'm telling our businesses on the North Shore is, we have spent the last 10 months doing a ton of local promotions. As you know, people are not traveling. There's, eating in restaurants in limited amounts. They're taking out a lot more. They're shopping because you can still shop. They are doing activities more outdoors when it's not 2 degrees out. But, we have, as we're situated as a suburban location outside of a major city, we're in a really unique situation because people are kind of staying away now from big city centers. And we do have a lot to offer the people that live in our communities to, again, what we as a North Shore Bureau are here to do is to not only encourage Glencoe residents to visit Glencoe businesses, but to get, people from Lake Forest to come to Glencoe or Evanston to come to Glencoe. And people are, stir crazy and want to do things, but they're keeping it local and smaller. And it's an opportunity for our businesses. So, we take this data and realize that on the top half, people aren't doing all those things. Well, they have discretionary income, so how do we get them to do the things that we have that are on the bottom part, which happen to be local? So, again, we've kind of changed what we do in keeping our marketing hyper local, which is not normally what we do. But for now, the goal is to make sure our businesses survive to be here for the recovery. And then, this is just always interesting to me, and I'm not going to, my takeaway here is we still have only 60-something% of people that say they're going to take the vaccine, which is crazy, but whatever, to each his own. But, since everyone says that they don't feel comfortable returning to normal life until everyone's vaccinated, it's interesting that, there's still a lot of people that don't want to be vaccinated. Now, these are people who say, yes, they would, but what's interesting is if you look at this chart, is we still have 21% of the population that say, I will not get vaccinated, and then you see people saying they're going to get vaccinated in later months going into the late spring and summer. That's, partly due because they've been told due to their age group and where they fall that they're not going to have availability. So, they know they can't get the vaccine in February, March, so they state later months. And then there's people who just want to see how people react to the vaccine. If new vaccines are going to come out that you might only need one shot for. So people fall all over the place because of that. But you still have 21% of people saying that they're not going to get a vaccine. And here is concerned about personal finances. As you can see, that's half of the people are concerned about their own finances, and a lot of that's tied to their own jobs. We've lost 10 million jobs in this country since the pandemic started. And then, we have many, many, many more people that are worried about the national economy as a whole and just, what's going to happen recession-wise or even inflation-wise with a lot of money being pumped into the economy. This is a much more overriding concern. But when people are worried about recessions and the economy in general, they pull back on their spending. So it does impact us. And that's my presentation. And my contact is all here, and there's a link to the presentation, but Jordan's going to send it out to whoever wants it anyways. And my phone number's wrong, but I got to fix it. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them. I know most of you may or may not know some of this, but and also if anybody in the future that gets this, Jordan, you can let people know that they can always contact me with questions. Is Jordan on here? I don't see her.
Jordan had to leave for another appointment this morning, but Gina, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing this information. It's been very educational and very helpful. we have plenty of time for questions if anyone has any questions for Gina or for Taylor and I, for that matter. No, not sounding like there are any. So going once, going twice. Well, thank you again, Gina, very much. It was a pleasure to spend time with you this morning, and we appreciate the information. Very comprehensive, and we'll be sure to share a copy of your presentation with the attendees this morning.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.